feelings, and was the result of his own observation. My love to your dear little one. I begin to feel my knee preparing to make ready for the reception of the Lady Arthritis. God bless you and St. Coleridge. Tuesday evening, the 23rd of June, 1801. 2. Footnote 1. Mackintosh. Footnote 2. Letters XXXY follow number 109. Coleridge, for want of funds, was unable for the present to carry out his project of going abroad, and the next letter to Davy tells us that he had resolved to go to London instead, and write for the daily papers again. Letter 110. To Davy Greta Hall, Keswick, Cumberland, the 31st of October, 1801. My dear Davy, I do not know by what fatality it has happened, but so it is, that I have thought more often of you, and I may say, yearned after your society more for the last 3 months than I ever before did, and yet I have not written to you. But you know that I honor you, and that I love whom I honor. Love and esteem with me have no individual being, and wherever this is not the case, I suspect there must be some lurking moral superstition which nature gets the better of, and that the real meaning of the phrase I love him though I cannot esteem him is, I esteem him, but not according to my system of esteem. But you, my dear fellow, all men love and esteem, which is the only suspicious part of your character, at least according to the 5th chapter of St. Matthew. God bless you. And now for the business of this letter. If I can, I leave this place so as to be in London on Wednesday, the 11th of next month. In London I shall stay a fortnight, but as I am in feeble health, and have a perfect phobia of inns and coffee houses, I should rejoice if you or Southey should be able to offer me a bedroom for the fortnight aforesaid. From London I move southward. Now for the italicized words if I can. The cryptical and implicit import of which is, I have a damned thorn in my leg, which the surgeon has not been yet able to extract, and but that I have metaphysicized most successfully on pain, in consequence of the accident, by the great scatterer of thoughts, I should have been half mad. But as it is I have borne it like a woman, which, I believe, to be 2 or 3 degrees at least beyond a stoic. A suppuration is going on, and I endure in hope. I have redirected some of Southey's letters to you, taking it for granted that you will see him immediately on his arrival in town. He left us yesterday afternoon. Let me hear from you, if it be only to say what I know already, that you will be glad to see me. Oh, dear friend, thou one of the 2 human beings of whom I dare hope with a hope that elevates my own heart. Oh bless you. St. Coleridge. 1. Footnote 1. Letters CXXIIXC follow number 110. Sir Humphrey Davy's description of Coleridge at this date is well known, and we must quote it. Coleridge has left London for Keswick. During his stay in town I saw him seldomer than usual. When I did see him, it was generally in the midst of large companies, where he is the image of power and activity. His eloquence is unimpaired. Perhaps it is softer and stronger. His will is less than ever commensurate with his ability. Brilliant images of greatness float upon his mind, like images of the morning clouds on the waters. Their forms are changed by the motions of the waves, they are agitated by every breeze, and modified by every sunbeam. He talked in the course of an hour of beginning 3 works. He recited the poem of Christabel unfinished, and as I had before heard it. What talent does he not waste in forming visions, sublime, but unconnected with the real world? I have looked to his efforts, as to the efforts of a creating being, but as yet he has not laid the foundation for the new world of intellectual forms, fragmentary remains. p. 74. Southey had now returned from Portugal, and was also in London. Southey's Letters, I. 183. It was not till September, 1803, that Southey came to Keswick. Southey's Letters, I. 229–31. During the interval Coleridge had written various things for the Morning Post, the most outstanding contributions being the 2 powerful letters to Fox of 4th and 9th of November, 1802, written on the occasion of that statesman going to Paris and paying court to Napoleon. The next 8 letters to Thomas Wedgwood give the best impression of Coleridge between October, 1802 and February, 1803. Letter 111 to Thomas Wedgwood, Keswick, the 20th of October, 1802. My dear Sir, this is my birthday, my 30th. It will not appear wonderful to you, when I tell you, that before the arrival of your letter, I had been thinking with a great weight of different feelings, concerning you, and your dear brother, for I have good reason to believe, that I should not now have been alive, if in addition to other miseries, I had had immediate poverty pressing upon me. I will never again remain silent so long. It has not been altogether indolence, or my habit of procrastination which have, 1. kept me from writing, but an eager wish, I may truly say, a thirst of spirit, to have something honorable to tell you of myself. At present I must be content to tell you something cheerful. My health is very much better. I am stronger in every respect, and am not injured by study, or the act of sitting at my writing desk, but my eyes suffer if at any time I have been intemperate in the use of candlelight. This account supposes another, namely, that my mind is calm, and more at ease. My dear Sir, when I was last with you at Stowey, my heart was often full, and I could scarcely keep from communicating to you the tale of my distresses. But could I add to your depression, when you were low? Or how interrupt, or cast a shade on your good spirits, that were so rare, and so precious to you? I found no comfort but in the driest speculations, in the Ode to Dejection, which you were pleased with. These lines, in the original, followed the line my shaping spirit of imagination, for not to think of what I needs must feel, but to be still and patient, all I can, and haply by abstruse research to steal from my own nature all the natural man. This was my sole resource, my only plan, and that which suits a part infests the whole, and now is almost grown the temper, too, of my soul. I give you these lines for the spirit, and not for the poetry. But better days are arrived, and are still to come. I have had visitations of hope, that I may yet be something of which those who love me may be proud. I cannot write that without recalling dear Poole. I have heard twice, and written twice, and I fear by a strange fatality, one of the letters will have missed him. Leslie, 3, was here some time ago. I was very much pleased with him. And now I will tell you what I am doing. I dedicate 3 days in the week to the Morning Post, and shall hereafter write, for the far greater part, such things as will be of as permanent interest as anything I can hope to write, and you will shortly see a little essay of mine, justifying the writing in a newspaper. My comparison of the French with the Roman Empire was very favorably received. The poetry which I have sent is merely the emptying out of my desk. The epigrams are wretched indeed, but they answered Stuart's purpose, better than better things. I ought not to have given any signature to them whatsoever. I never dreamt of acknowledging either them, or the Ode to the Rain. As to feeble expressions, and unpolished lines, there is the rub. Indeed, my dear sir, I do value your opinion very highly. I think your judgment on the sentiment, the imagery, the flow of a poem, decisive, at least, if it differed from my own. And if after frequent consideration mine remained different, it would leave me at least perplexed. For you are a perfect electrometer in these things, but in point of poetic diction, I am not so well satisfied that you do not require a certain aloofness from the language of real life, which I think deadly to poetry. Very soon, however, I shall present you from the press with my opinions full on the subject of style, both in prose and verse, and I am confident of one thing, that I shall convince you that I have thought much and patiently on the subject, and that I understand the whole strength of my antagonist's cause. For I am now busy on the subject, and shall in a very few weeks go to press with a volume on the prose writings of Hall, Milton, and Taylor, and shall immediately follow it up with an essay on the writings of Dr. Johnson and Gibbon, and in these 2 volumes I flatter myself I shall present a fair history of English prose. If my life and health remain, and I do but write half as much, and as regularly as I have done during the last 6 weeks, this will be finished by January next, and I shall then put together my memorandum book on the subject of poetry. In both I have endeavored sedulously to state the facts and the differences clearly and accurately, and my reasons for the preference of one style to another are secondary to this. Of this be assured, that I will never give anything to the world in propria persona in my own name which I have not tormented with the file. I sometimes suspect that my foul copy would often appear to general readers more polished than my fair copy. Many of the feeble and colloquial expressions have been industriously substituted for others which struck me as artificial, and not standing the test, as being neither the language of passion, nor distinct conceptions. Dear Sir, indulge me with looking still further on in my literary life. I have, since my 20th year, meditated an heroic poem on the siege of Jerusalem, by Titus. This is the pride and the stronghold of my hope, but I never think of it except in my best moods. The work to which I dedicate the ensuing years of my life, is one which highly pleased Leslie, in perspective, and my paper will not let me prattle to you about it. I have written what you more wished me to write, all about myself. Our climate, in the north, is inclement, and our houses not as compact as they might be, but it is a stirring climate, and the worse the weather, the more unceasingly entertaining are my study windows, and the month that is to come is the glory of the year with us. A very warm bedroom I can promise you, and one at the same time which commands the finest lake and mountain view. If Leslie could not go abroad with you, and I could in any way mold my manners and habits to suit you, I should of all things like to be your companion. Good nature, an affectionate disposition, and so thorough a sympathy with the nature of your complaint, that I should feel no pain, not the most momentary, at being told by you what your feelings require at the time in which they required it. This I should bring with me. But I need not say that you may say to me, you don't suit me, without inflicting the least mortification. Of course this letter is for your brother, as for you, but I shall write to him soon. God bless you, St. Coleridge. Thomas Wedgwood, Esquire, footnote 1, sic. Footnote 2, Cottle Prince Temple and Eridot. Footnote 3, the eminent Edinburgh professor. For 3 years the private tutor of Mr. T. Wedgwood, Cottle. For further information regarding John, afterwards Sir John, Leslie, 1766 to 1832, see Tom Wedgwood by Lichfield. Letter 112. To Thomas Wedgwood Keswick, the 3rd of November, 1802. Dear Wedgwood, it is now 2 hours since I received your letter, and after the necessary consultation, Mrs. Coleridge herself is fully of opinion that to lose time is merely to lose spirits. Accordingly I have resolved not to look the children in the face, the parting from whom is the downright bitter in the thing, but to go to London by tomorrow's mail. Of course I shall be in London, God permitting, on Saturday morning. I shall rest that day, and the next, and proceed to Bristol by the Monday night's mail. At Bristol I will go to Court House, 1, at all events, barring serious illness, serious fractures, and the etc. of serious unforeseens. I shall be at Bristol, Tuesday noon, November the 9th. You are aware that my whole knowledge of French does not extend beyond the power of limping slowly, not without a dictionary crutch, through an easy French book, and that as to pronunciation, all my organs of speech, from the bottom of the larynx to the edge of my lips, are utterly and naturally anti-Gallican. If only I shall have been any comfort, any alleviation to you, I shall feel myself at ease, and whether you go abroad or no, while I remain with you, it will greatly contribute to my comfort, if I know you will have no hesitation, nor pain, in telling me what you wish me to do, or not to do. I regard it among the blessings of my life, that I have never lived among men whom I regarded as my artificial superiors, that all the respect I have at any time paid, has been wholly to supposed goodness, or talent. The consequence has been that I have no alarms of pride, no chevaux-de-frise of independence. I have always lived among equals. It never occurs to me, even for a moment, that I am otherwise. If I have quarrelled with men, it has been as brothers or as schoolfellows quarrel. How little any man can give me, or take from me, save in matters of kindness and esteem, is not so much a thought or conviction with me, or even a distinct feeling, as it is my very nature. Much as I dislike all formal declarations of this kind, I have deemed it well to say this. I have as strong feelings of gratitude as any man. Shame upon me if in the sickness and the sorrow which I have had, and which have been kept unaggravated and supportable by your kindness, and your brother's, Mr. Josiah Wedgwood, shame upon me if I did not feel a kindness, not unmixed with reverence towards you both. But yet I never should have had my present impulses to be with you, and this confidence, that I may become an occasional comfort to you, if, independently of all gratitude, I did not thoroughly esteem you, and if I did not appear to myself to understand the nature of your sufferings, and within the last year, in some slight degree to have felt myself, something of the same. Forgive me, my dear sir, if I have said too much. It is better to write it than to say it, and I am anxious in the event of our travelling together that you should yourself be at ease with me, even as you would with a younger brother, to whom, from his childhood you had been in the habit of saying, "Do this, Colonel, or don't do that." All good be with you. St. Coleridge. Thomas Wedgwood, Esquire, 2. Footnote, 1 Westbury, near Bristol, the then residence of Mr. John Wedgwood. Footnote 2, letters XXIV follow 112. Letter 113. To Thomas Wedgwood Keswick, the 9th of January, 1803. My dear Wedgwood, I send you 2 letters, one from your dear sister, the second from Sharp, by which you will see at what short notice I must be off, if I go to the Canaries. If your last plan continue in full force, I have not even the phantom of a wish thitherward struggling, but if aught have happened to you, in the things without, or in the world within, to induce you to change the place, or the plan, relatively to me, I think I could raise the money. But I would 1,000-fold rather go with you whithersoever you go. I shall be anxious to hear how you have gone on since I left you. You should decide in favor of a better climate somewhere or other. The best scheme I can think of, is to go to some part of Italy or Sicily, which we both liked. I would look out for 2 houses. Wordsworth and his family would take the one, and I the other, and then you might have a home either with me, or if you thought of Mr. and Mrs. Luff, under this modification, one of your own, and in either case you would have neighbors, and so return to England when the homesickness pressed heavy upon you, and back to Italy when it was abated, and the climate of England began to poison your comforts. So you would have abroad in a genial climate, certain comforts of society among simple and enlightened men and women, and I should be an alleviation of the pang which you will necessarily feel, as often as you quit your own family. I know no better plan, for traveling in search of objects is at best a dreary business, and whatever excitement it might have had, you must have exhausted it. God bless you, my dear friend. I write with demise, for indeed, my heart is very full of affectionate sorrowful thoughts toward you. I write with difficulty, with all the fingers but one of my right hand very much swollen. Before I was half up the Kirkstone mountain, the storm had wetted me through and through, and before I reached the top it was so wild and outrageous, that it would have been unmanly to have suffered the poor woman, guide, to continue pushing on, up against such a torrent of wind and rain, so I dismounted and sent her home with the storm in her back. I am no novice in mountain mischiefs, but such a storm as this was, I never witnessed, combining the intensity of the cold, with the violence of the wind and rain. The raindrops were pelted or slung against my face by the gusts, just like splinters of flint, and I felt as if every drop cut my flesh. My hands were all shriveled up like a washerwoman's, and so benumbed that I was obliged to carry my stick under my arm. Oh, it was a wild business. Such hurry-scurry of clouds, such volleys of sound. In spite of the wet and the cold, I should have had some pleasure in it, but for two vexations. First, an almost intolerable pain came into my right eye, a smarting and burning pain, and secondly, in consequence of riding with such cold water under my seat, extremely uneasy and burthensome feelings attacked my groin, so that, what with the pain from the one, and the alarm from the other, I had no enjoyment at all. Just at the brow of the hill I met a man dismounted, who could not sit on horseback. He seemed quite scared by the uproar, and said to me, with much feeling, "Oh sir, it is a perilous buffeting, but it is worse for you than for me, for I have it at my back." However, I got safely over, and immediately all was calm and breathless, as if it was some mighty fountain put on the summit of Kirkstone, that shot forth its volcano of air, and precipitated huge streams of invisible lava down the road to Patterdale. I went on to Grasmere. 1. I was not at all unwell, when I arrived there, though wet of course to the skin. My right eye had nothing the matter with it, either to the sight of others, or to my own feelings, but I had a bad night, with distressful dreams, chiefly about my eye, and waking often in the dark I thought it was the effect of mere recollection, but it appeared in the morning that my right eye was bloodshot, and the lid swollen. That morning however I walked home, and before I reached Keswick, my eye was quite well, but I felt unwell all over. Yesterday I continued unusually unwell all over me till 8 o'clock in the evening. I took no laudanum or opium, but at 8 o'clock, unable to bear the stomach uneasiness and achings of my limbs, I took 2 large teaspoons full of ether in a wine glass of camphorated gum water, and a 3rd teaspoonful at 10 o'clock, and I received complete relief, my body calmed, my sleep placid, but when I awoke in the morning, my right hand, with 3 of the fingers, was swollen and inflamed. The swelling in the hand is gone down, and of 2 of the fingers somewhat abated, but the middle finger is still twice its natural size, so that I write with difficulty. This has been a very rough attack, but though I am much weakened by it, and look sickly and haggard, yet I am not out of heart. Such a perilous buffeting was enough to have hurt the health of a strong man. Few constitutions can bear to be long wet through in intense cold. I fear it will tire you to death to read this prolix scrawled story. Affectionately dear friend, yours ever, St. Coleridge. 2. Footnote 1. The then residence of Mr. Wordsworth. Cottle. Footnote 2. Letter CXXXV is our number 110. Letter 114. To Thomas Wedgwood. Friday night, the 14th of January, 1803. Dear friend, I was glad at heart to receive your letter, and still more gladdened by the reading of it. The exceeding kindness which it breathed was literally medicinal to me, and I firmly believe, cured me of a nervous rheumatic affection, the acid and the oil, very completely at Patterdale, but by the time it came to Keswick, the oil was all atop. You ask me, why, in the name of goodness, I did not return when I saw the state of the weather. The true reason is simple, though it may be somewhat strange. The thought never once entered my head. The cause of this I suppose to be, that, I do not remember it at least, I never once in my whole life turned back in fear of the weather. Prudence is a plant, of which I no doubt possess some valuable specimens, but they are always in my hothouse, never out of the glasses, and least of all things would endure the climate of the mountains. In simple earnestness, I never find myself alone, within the embracement of rocks and hills, a traveller up an alpine road, but my spirit careers, drives, and eddies, like a leaf in autumn. A wild activity of thoughts, imaginations, feelings, and impulses of motion rises up from within me, a sort of bottom wind, that blows to no point of the compass, comes from I know not whence, but agitates the whole of me. My whole being is filled with waves that roll and stumble, one this way, and one that way, like things that have no common master. I think that my soul must have pre-existed in the body of a chamois chaser. The simple image of the old object has been obliterated, but the feelings, and impulsive habits, and incipient actions, are in me, and the old scenery awakens them. The further I ascend from animated nature, from men, and cattle, and the common birds of the woods and fields, the greater becomes in me the intensity of the feeling of life. Life seems to me then an universal spirit, that neither has, nor can have an opposite. God is everywhere, I have exclaimed, and works everywhere, and where is there room for death? In these moments it has been my creed, that death exists only because ideas exist, that life is limitless sensation, that death is a child of the organic senses, chiefly of the sight, that feelings die by flowing into the mold of the intellect becoming ideas, and that ideas passing forth into action, reinstate themselves again in the world of life. And I do believe that truth lies in these loose generalizations. I do not think it possible that any bodily pains could eat out the love of joy, that is so substantially part of me, towards hills, and rocks, and steep waters, and I have had some trial. On Monday night I had an attack in my stomach and right side, which in pain, and the length of its continuance appeared to me by far the severest I ever had. About 1 o'clock the pain passed out of my stomach, like lightning from a cloud, into the extremities of my right foot. My toe swelled and throbbed, and I was in a state of delicious ease, which the pain in my toe did not seem at all to interfere with. On Tuesday I was uncommonly well all the morning, and ate an excellent dinner, but playing too long and too rompingly with Hartley and Derwent, I was very unwell that evening. On Wednesday I was well, and after dinner wrapped myself up warm, and walked with Sarah Hutchinson to Lodore. I never beheld anything more impressive than the wild outline of the black masses of mountain over Lodore, and so on to the gorge of Borrowdale. Even through the bare twigs of a grove of birch trees, through which the road passes, and on emerging from the grove a red planet, so very red that I never saw a star so red, being clear and bright at the same time. It seemed to have sky behind it. It started, as it were from the heavens, like an eyeball of fire. I wished aloud at that moment that you had been with me. The walk appears to have done me good, but I had a wretched night, shocking pains in my head, occiput, and teeth, and found in the morning that I had 2 bloodshot eyes. But almost immediately after the receipt and perusal of your letter the pains left me, and I am bettered to this hour, and am now indeed as well as usual, saving that my left eye is very much bloodshot. It is a sort of duty with me, to be particular respecting facts that relate to my health. I have retained a good sound appetite through the whole of it, without any craving after exhilarants or narcotics, and I have got well as in a moment. Rapid recovery is constitutional with me, but the former circumstances, I can with certainty refer to the system of diet, abstinence from vegetables, wine, spirits, and beer, which I have adopted by your advice. I have no dread or anxiety respecting any fatigue which either of us is likely to undergo, even in continental travelling. Many a healthy man would have been laid up with such a bout of thorough wet, and intense cold at the same time, as I had at Kirkstone. Would to God that also for your sake I were a stronger man, but I have strong wishes to be with you. I love your society, and receiving much comfort from you, and believing likewise that I receive much improvement, I find a delight very great, my dear friend. Indeed it is, when I have reason to imagine that I am in return an alleviation to your destinies, and a comfort to you. I have no fears and am ready to leave home at a 2 days' warning. For myself I should say 2 hours, but bustle and hurry might disorder Mrs. Coleridge. She and the 3 children are quite well. 1. I grieve that there is a lowering in politics. The Monitor contains almost daily some bitter abuse of our Minister and Parliament, and in London there is great anxiety and omening. I have dreaded war from the time that the disastrous fortunes of the expedition to Saint Domingo, under Leclerc, was known in France. Write me 1 or 2 lines, as few as you like. I remain, my dear Wedgwood, with most affectionate esteem, and grateful attachment, your sincere friend, S.T. Coleridge. Thomas Wedgwood, Esquire. Footnote 1. Sarah had been born the 23rd of December 1802. Letter 115. To Thomas Wedgwood Netherstowey, the 10th of February, 1803. Dear Wedgwood, last night Poole and I fully expected a few lines from you. When the newspaper came in, without your letter, we felt as if a dull neighbor had been ushered in after a knock at the door which had made us rise up and start forward to welcome some long-absent friend. Indeed, in Poole's case, this simile is less overswollen than in mine, for in contempt of my convictions and assurance to the contrary, Poole, passing off the Brummagem coin of his wishes for sterling reasons, had persuaded himself fully that he should see you in propria persona. The truth is, we had no right to expect a letter from you, and I should have attributed your not writing to your having nothing to write, to your bodily dislike of writing, or, though with reluctance, to low spirits, but that I have been haunted with the fear that your sister is worse, and that you are at Cote House, in the mournful office of comforter to your brother. God keep us from idle dreams. Life has enough of real pains. I wrote to Captain Wordsworth to get me some bang. The captain in an affectionate letter answers me, the bang if possible shall be sent. If any country ship arrives I shall certainly get it. We have not got anything of the kind in our China ships. If you would rather wait till it can be brought by Captain Wordsworth himself from China, give me a line that I may write and tell him. We shall hope for a letter from you tonight. I need not say, dear Wedgwood, how anxious I am to hear the particulars of your health and spirits. Poole's account of his conversations, etc., in France, are very interesting and instructive. If your inclination lead you hither you would be very comfortable here. But I am ready at an hour's warning, ready in heart and mind, as well as in body and movables. I am, dear Wedgwood, most truly yours, St. Coleridge. Thomas Wedgwood, Esquire, Letter 116. To Thomas Wedgwood. Stowey, the 10th of February, 1803. My dear Wedgwood, with regard to myself and my accompanying you, let me say thus much. My health is not worse than it was in the north, indeed it is much better. I have no fears. But if you fear that, my health being what you know it to be, the inconveniences of my being with you will be greater than the advantages, I feel no reluctance in telling you so. 1. It is so entirely an affair of spirits and feeling that the conclusion must be made by you, not in your reason, but purely in your spirit and feeling. Sorry indeed should I be to know that you had gone abroad with one, to whom you were comparatively indifferent. Sorry if there should be no one with you, who could with fellow feeling and general like-mindedness, yield you sympathy in your sunshiny moments. Dear Wedgwood, my heart swells within me as it were. I have no other wish to accompany you than what arises immediately from my personal attachment, and a deep sense in my own heart, that let us be as dejected as we will, a week together cannot pass in which a mind like yours would not feel the want of affection, or be wholly torpid to its pleasurable influences. I cannot bear to think of your going abroad with a mere travelling companion, with one at all influenced by salary, or personal conveniences. You will not suspect me of flattering you, but indeed, dear Wedgwood, you are too good and too valuable a man to deserve to receive attendance from a hireling, even for a month together, in your present state. If I do not go with you, I shall stay in England only such time as may be necessary for me to raise the travelling money, and go immediately to the south of France. I shall probably cross the Pyrenees to Bilbao, see the country of Biscay, and cross the north of Spain to Perpignan, and so on to the north of Italy, and pass my next winter at Nice. I have every reason to believe that I can live, even as a traveller, as cheap as I can in England. God bless you. I will repeat no professions, even in the superscription of a letter. You know me, and that it is my serious, simple wish, that in everything respecting me, you would think altogether of yourself, and nothing of me, and be assured that no resolve of yours, however suddenly adopted, or however nakedly communicated, will give me any pain, any at least arising from my own bearings. Yours ever, S.T. Coleridge. Thomas Wedgwood, Esquire P.S. Perhaps Leslie will go with you. Footnote 1. Should be feel no reluctance in telling me so. Letter 117. To Thomas Wedgwood. Pools, the 17th of February, 1803. My dear Wedgwood, I do not know that I have anything to say that justifies me in troubling you with the postage and perusal of this scrawl. I received a short and kind letter from Josiah last night. He is named the Sheriff Poole, who has received a very kind invitation from your brother John, in a letter of last Monday, and which was repeated in last night's letter, goes with me, I hope in the full persuasion that you will be there, at Cote House, before he be under the necessity of returning home. Poole is a very, very good man. I like even his incorrigibility in little faults and deficiencies. It looks like a wise determination of nature to let well alone. Are you not laying out a scheme which will throw your travelling in Italy into an unpleasant and unwholesome part of the year? From all I can gather, you ought to leave this country at the 1st of April at the latest. But no doubt you know these things better than I. If I do not go with you, it is very probable we shall meet somewhere or other. At all events you will know where I am, and I can come to you if you wish it. And if I go with you, there will be this advantage, that you may drop me where you like, if you should meet any Frenchman, Italian, or Swiss, whom you liked, and who would be pleasant and profitable to you. But this we can discuss at Gunville. As to 1. I never doubted that he means to fulfill his engagements with you, but he is one of those weak-moraled men, with whom the meaning to do a thing means nothing. He promises with 90 parts out of 100 of his whole heart, but there is always a speck of cold at the core that transubstantiates the whole resolve into a lie. I remain in comfortable health, warm rooms, an old friend, and tranquility, are specifics for my complaints. With all my ups and downs I have a deal of joyous feeling, and I would with gladness give a good part of it to you, my dear friend. God grant that spring may come to you with healing on her wings. God bless you, my dear Wedgwood. I remain with most affectionate esteem, and regular attachment, and good wishes. Yours ever, S.T. Coleridge. Thomas Wedgwood, Esquire P.S. If Southey should send a couple of bottles, one of the red sulphate, and one of the compound acids for me. Will you be so good as to bring them with you? Footnote 1, Mackintosh. Letter 118. To Thomas Wedgwood. Stowe, the 17th of February, 1803. My dear Wedgwood, last night I received a 4-ounce parcel letter, by the post, which Poole and I concluded was the mistake or carelessness of the servant, who had put the letter into the post office, instead of the coach office. I should have been indignant, if dear Poole had not set me laughing. On opening it, it contained my letter from Gunville, and a small parcel of bang from Perkys. I will transcribe the parts of his letter which relate to it. Brentford, the 7th of February, 1803. My dear Coleridge, I thank you for your letter, and am happy to be the means of obliging you. Immediately on the receipt of yours, I wrote to Sir Joseph Banks, who I verily believe is one of the most excellent and useful men of this country, requesting a small quantity of bang, and saying it was for the use of Mr. T. Wedgwood. I yesterday received the parcel which I now send, accompanied with a very kind letter, and as part of it will be interesting to you and your friend, I will transcribe it. The bang you ask for is the powder of the leaves of a kind of hemp that grows in the hot climates. It is prepared, and I believe used, in all parts of the East, from Morocco to China. In Europe it is found to act very differently on different constitutions. Some it elevates in the extreme, others it renders torpid, and scarcely observant of any evil that may befall them. In Barbary it is always taken, if it can be procured, by criminals condemned to suffer amputation, and it is said, to enable those miserables to bear the rough operations of an unfeeling executioner, more than we Europeans can the keen knife of our most skilful chirurgeons. This it may be necessary to have said to my friend Mr. T. Wedgwood, whom I respect much, as his virtues deserve, and I know them well. I send a small quantity only as I possess but little. If however, it is found to agree, I will instantly forward the whole of my stock, and write without delay to Barbary, from whence it came, for more. Sir Joseph adds, in a postscript, it seems almost beyond a doubt, that the nepenthe was a preparation of the bang, known to the ancients. Now I had better take the small parcel with me to Gunville, if I send it by the post. Besides the heavy expense, I cannot rely on the Stowe carriers, who are a brace of as careless and dishonest rogues as ever had claims on that article of the hemp and timber trade, called the gallows. Indeed I verily believe that if all Stowe, Ward excepted, does not go to hell, it will be by the supererogation of Poole's sense of honesty. Charitable. We will have a fair trial of bang. Do bring down some of the hyoscyamine pills, and I will give a fair trial of opium, henbane, and nepenthe. By the by, I always considered Homer's account of the nepenthe as a banging lie. God bless you, my dear friend, and St. Coleridge. 1. Footnote 1. Letter XXV follows 118. The last 4 letters were written from Stowe, whither Coleridge had gone on a visit to Poole. During the same period some events had taken place which changed the aspect of things. He had become acquainted with William Sotheby, the poet, translator of Homer and Wieland, to whom he communicated in long letters his views on Wordsworth's theory of poetic diction, indicating a widening divergence from his brother poet. He had also made for the satisfaction of Sotheby a translation in blank verse of Gessner's Erste Schiffer, which has been lost, letters 369 to 401. He had likewise paraphrased one of Gessner's Idylls, published as the picture of the lover's resolution, in the Morning Post of the 6th of September, 1802. Dejection, an ode, the hymn before sunrise, and the beautiful dramatic fragment, the night scene, are the last products of Coleridge's chilled poetic imagination. A third edition, 1803, of the early poems was issued under the superintendence of Lamb, Ainger, I. 199 to 206. He had made a second tour in Wales in company with Tom Wedgwood in November and December 1802, letters 410 to 417, returning to find that Sarah had been born on the 23rd of December 1802. In August 1803 Coleridge went on tour to Scotland with the Wordsworths, letters 451, and Dorothy Wordsworth's journal. It is impossible for us to give all the correspondence of this busy, mental period, but on the 4th of June, 1803, Coleridge writes to Godwin. Letter 119. To Godwin Saturday night, the 4th of June, 1803. Greta Hall, Keswick. My dear Godwin, I trust that my dear friend, C. Lamb, will have informed you how seriously ill I have been. I arrived at Keswick on Good Friday, caught the influenza, have struggled on in a series of convalescence and relapse, the disease still assuming new shapes and symptoms, and, though I am certainly better than at any former period of the disease, and more steadily convalescent, yet it is not mere low spirits that makes me doubt whether I shall ever wholly surmount the effects of it. I owe, then, explanation to you, for I quitted town, with strong feelings of affectionate esteem towards you, and a firm resolution to write to you within a short time after my arrival at my home. During my illness I was exceedingly affected by the thought that month had glided away after month, and year after year, and still had found and left me only preparing for the experiments which are to ascertain whether the hopes of those who have hoped proudly of me have been auspicious omens or mere delusions, and the anxiety to realize something, and finish something, has, no doubt, in some measure retarded my recovery. I am now, however, ready to go to the press with a work which I consider as introductory to a system, though to the public it will appear altogether a thing by itself. I write now to ask your advice respecting the time and manner of its publication, and the choice of a publisher. I entitle it Organum Vera Organum, or an instrument of practical reasoning in the business of real life, 1. To which will be prefixed, 1. A familiar introduction to the common system of logic, namely, that of Aristotle and the schools. 2. A concise and simple, yet full statement of the Aristotelian logic, with reference annexed to the authors, and the name and page of the work to which each part may be traced, so that it may be at once seen what is Aristotle's, what Porphyry's, what the addition of the Greek commentators, and what of the schoolmen. 3. An outline of the history of logic in general, first chapter. The origin of philosophy in general, and of logic speciatim. 2d chap. Of the Eleatic and Megaric logic. 3d chap. Of the Platonic logic. 4th chap. Of Aristotle, containing a fair account of the Greek organon, of which Dr. Reid, in Keim's Sketches of Man, has given a most false, and not only erroneous, but calumnious statement, in as far as the account had not been anticipated in the second part of my work, namely, the concise and simple, yet full, etc. etc. 5th chap. A philosophical examination of the truth and of the value of the Aristotelian system of logic, including all the after additions to it. 6th chap. On the characteristic merits and demerits of Aristotle and Plato as philosophers in general, and an attempt to explain the fact of the vast influence of the former during so many ages, and of the influence of Plato's works on the restoration of the belles lettres, and on the Reformation. 7th chap. Raymond Lully. 8th chap. Peter Ramus. 9th chap. Lord Bacon, or the Veriliman logic. Both chap. Examination of the same, and comparison of it with the logic of Plato, in which I attempt to make it probable that, though considered by Bacon himself as the antithesis and the antidote of Plato, it is bona fide the same, and that Plato has been misunderstood. 2. 10th chap. Descartes, 11th chap. Condillac, and a philosophical examination of his logic, i.e. the logic which he basely purloined from Hartley. Then follows my own organum vera organum, which consists of a asterisk, Greek, euster emma, of all possible modes of true, probable, and false reasoning, arranged philosophically, i.e. on a strict analysis of those operations and passions of the mind in which they originate, or by which they act, with one or more striking instances annexed to each, from authors of high estimation, and to each instance of false reasoning, the manner in which the sophistry is to be detected, and the words in which it may be exposed. The whole will conclude with considerations of the value of the work, or its practical utility in scientific investigations, especially the first part, which contains the strictly demonstrative reasonings, and the analysis of all the acts and passions of the mind which may be employed to the discovery of truth, in the arts of healing, especially in those parts that contain a catalogue, etc. of probable reasoning. Lastly, to the Senate, the pulpit, and our law courts, to whom the whole, but especially the latter 3/4 of the work, on the probable and the false, will be useful, and finally instructive, how to form a commonplace book by the aid of this instrument, so as to read with practical advantage, and, supposing average talents, to ensure facility and rapidity in proving and in computing. I have thus amply detailed the contents of my work, which has not been the labor of 1 year or of 2, but the result of many years' meditations, and of very various reading. The size of the work will, printed at 30 lines a page, form 1 volume 8vo, 500 pages to the volume, and I shall be ready with the first half of the work for the printer at a fortnight's notice. Now, my dear friend, give me your thoughts on the subject. Would you have me to offer it to the booksellers, or, by the assistance of my friends, print and publish on my own account? If the former, would you advise me to sell the copyright at once, or only one or more editions? Can you give me a general notion what terms I have a right to insist on in either case? And, lastly, to whom would you advise me to apply? Phillips is a pushing man, and a book is sure to have fair play if it be his property, and it could not be other than pleasant to me to have the same publisher with yourself, but now if there be anything of impatience, that whether truth and justice ought to follow that, but you will inform me. It is not my habit to go to work so seriously about matters of pecuniary business, but my ill health makes my life more than ordinarily uncertain, and I have a wife and 3 little ones. If your judgment leads you to advise me to offer it to Phillips, would you take the trouble of talking with him on the subject, and give him your real opinion, whatever it may be, of the work and of the powers of the author? When this book is fairly off my hands, I shall, if I live and have sufficient health, set seriously to work in arranging what I have already written, and in pushing forward my studies and my investigations relative to the ensemble of human nature, what we are, and how we become what we are, so as to solve the 2 grand problems: how, being acted upon, we shall act; how, acting, we shall be acted upon. But between me and this work there may be death. I hope your wife and little ones are well. I have had a sick family. At one time every individual, master, mistress, children, and servants, were all laid up in bed, and we were waited on by persons hired from the town for the week. But now all are well, I only excepted. If you find my paper smell, or my style savor of scholastic quiddity, you must attribute it to the infectious quality of the folio on which I am writing, namely, Scotus Eriginida Division Naturae, the forerunner, by some centuries, of the Schoolman. I cherish all kinds of honorable feelings towards you, and I am, dear Godwin, yours most sincerely, St. Coleridge. Footnote 1 extant in MSc Athenaeum, the 26th of October 1895. Footnote 2, see The Friend, Bonn Library, pp. 319-345. You know the high character and present scarcity of Tucker's Light of Nature. I have found in this writer, says Paley, in his preface to his Moral and Political Philosophy, more original thinking and observation upon the several subjects he has taken in hand than in any other, not to say in all others put together. His talent also for illustration is unrivaled. But his thoughts are diffused through a long, various, and irregular work. And a friend of mine, every way calculated by his taste and private studies for such a work, is willing to abridge and systematize that work from 8 to 2 volumes, in the words of Paley, to dispose into method, to collect into heads and articles, and to exhibit in more compact and tangible masses, what in that otherwise excellent performance is spread over too much surface. I would prefix to it an essay containing the whole substance of the first volume of Hartley, entirely defecated from all the corpuscular hypothesis, with more illustrations. I give my name to the essay. Likewise I will revise every sheet of the abrigment. I should think the character of the work, and the above quotations from so high an authority, with the present public, I mean, as Paley, would ensure its success. If you will read or transcribe, and send this to Mr. Phillips, or to any other publisher, Longman and Rees excepted, you would greatly oblige me, that is to say, my dear Godwin. You would essentially serve a young man of profound genius and original mind, who wishes to get his Sabine subsistence by some employment from the booksellers, while he is employing the remainder of his time in nursing up his genius for the destiny which he believes appurtenant to it. Qui cito facit, bis facit. Impose any task on me in return. 2. Footnote 1, Hazlitt. The abrigment was made, and published in 1807. Footnote 2, letter XXXAE follows 119. Godwin published his Life of Chaucer in 1803. The next letter refers to this work. Letter 120. To Godwin, Friday, the 10th of July, 1803. Greta Hall. My dear Godwin, your letter has this moment reached me, and found me writing for Stuart, to whom I am under a positive engagement to produce 3 essays by the beginning of next week. To promise, therefore, to do what I could not do would be worse than idle, and to attempt to do what I could not do well, from distraction of mind, would be trifling with my time and your patience. If I could convey to you any tolerably distinct notion of the state of my spirits of late, and the train or the sort of my ideas consequent on that state, you would feel instantly that my non-performance of the promise is matter of regret with me indeed, but not of compunction. It was my full intention to have prepared immediately a 2nd volume of poems for the press, but, though the poems are all either written or composed, excepting only the conclusion of one poem, equal to 4 days' common work, and a few corrections, and though I had the most pressing motives for sending them off, yet after many attempts I was obliged to give up the very hope. The attempts acted so perniciously on my disorder. Wordsworth, too, wished, and in a very particular manner expressed the wish, that I should write to him at large on a poetic subject, which he has at present sub maleo ardentum itignicum. I made the attempt, but I could not command my recollections. It seemed a dream that I had ever thought on poetry, or had ever written it, so remote were my trains of ideas from composition or criticism on composition. These 2 instances will, in some manner, explain my non-performance, but, indeed, I have been very ill, and that I have done anything in any way is a subject of wonder to myself, and of no causeless self-complacency. Yet I am anxious to do something which may convince you of my sincerity by zeal, and, if you think that it will be of any service to you, I will send down for the work. I will instantly give it a perusal con amore, and partly by my reverential love of Chaucer, and partly from my affectionate esteem for his biographer, the summer, too, bringing increase of health with it, I doubt not that my old mind will recur to me, and I will forthwith write a series of letters, containing a critique on Chaucer, and on the Life of Chaucer, by W. Godwin, and publish them, with my name, either at once in a small volume, or in the Morning Post in the first instance, and republish them afterwards. The great thing to be done is to present Chaucer stripped of all his adventitious matter, his translations, etc., to analyze his own real productions, to deduce his province and his rank, then to compare him with his contemporaries, or with immediate pred and successors, first as an Englishman, and secondly as a European, then with Spenser and with Shakespeare, between whom he seems to stand midway, with, however, a manner of his own which belongs to neither, with a manner and an excellence, lastly, to compare Dante and Chaucer, and inclusively Spenser and Shakespeare, with the ancients, to abstract the characteristic differences, and to develop the causes of such differences. For instance, in all the writings of the ancients I recollect nothing that, strictly examined, can be called humor, yet Chaucer abounds with it, and Dante, too, though in a very different way. Thus, too, the passion for personifications and, me judice, strong, sharp, practical good sense, which I feel to constitute a strikingly characteristic difference in favor of the feudal poets. As to information, I could give you a critical sketch of poems, written by contemporaries of Chaucer, in Germany, an epic to compare with his Palamon, and tales with his tales, descriptive and fanciful poems with those of the same kind in our own poet. In short, a life of Chaucer ought, in the work itself, and in the appendices of the work, to make the poet explain his age, and to make the age both explain the poet, and evince the superiority of the poet over his age. I think that the publication of such a work would do your work some little service, in more ways than one. It would occasion, necessarily, a double review of it in all the reviews, and there is a large class of fashionable men who have been pleased of late to take me into high favor, and among whom even my name might have some influence, and my praises of you weight. But let me hear from you on the subject. Now for my own business. As soon as you possibly can do something respecting the abrigment of Tucker, 1. Do so, you will, on my honor, be doing good, in the best sense of the word. Of course I cannot wish you to do anything till after the 24th, unless it should be put in your way to read that part of the letter to Phillips. As to my own work, let me correct one or two conceptions of yours respecting it. I could, no doubt, induce my friends to publish the work for me, but I am possessed of facts that deter me. I know that the booksellers not only do not encourage, but that they use unjustifiable artifices to injure works published on the author's own account. It never answered, as far as I can find, in any instance. And even the sale of a first edition is not without objections on this score. To this, however, I should certainly adhere, and it is my resolution. But I must do something immediately. Now, If I knew that any bookseller would purchase the first edition of this work, as numerous as he pleased, I should put the work out of hand at once, totus in illo. But it was never my intention to send one single sheet to the press till the whole was bona fide ready for the printer, that is, both written, and fairly written. The work is half written out, and the materials of the other half are all in paper, or rather on papers. I should not expect 1 farthing till the work was delivered entire, and I would deliver it at once, if it were wished. But, if I cannot engage with a bookseller for this, I must do something else first, which I should be sorry for. Your division of the sorts of works acceptable to booksellers is just, and what has been always my own notion or rather knowledge, but, though I detailed the whole of the contents of my work so fully to you, I did not mean to lay any stress with the bookseller on the first half, but simply state it as preceded by a familiar introduction, and critical history of logic. On the work itself I meant to lay all the stress, as a work really in request, and non-existent, either well or ill done, and to put the work in the same class with Guthrie and books of practical instruction, for the universities, classes of scholars, lawyers, etc. etc. Its profitable sale will greatly depend on the pushing of the booksellers, and on its being considered as a practical book, organum vir organum, a book by which the reader is to acquire not only knowledge, but likewise power. I fear that it may extend to 700 pages, and would it be better to publish the introduction of history separately, either after or before? God bless you, and all belonging to you, and your Chaucer. All happiness to you and your wife. Ever yours, STCPS. If you read to Phillips any part of my letter respecting my own work, or rather detailed it to him, you would lay all the stress on the practical. Footnote 1. Godwin exerted himself actively in the matter, as appears by the correspondence of Charles Lamb. The ambitious scheme of the letters to Godwin did not exhaust Coleridge's projects at this season. To Southey he wrote, Letter 121. To Southey, 1, Keswick, July, 1803. My dear Southey, I write now to propose a scheme, or rather a rude outline of a scheme, of your grand work. What harm can a proposal do? If it be no pain to you to reject it, it will be none to me to have it rejected. I would have the work entitled Bibliotheca Britannica, or an History of British Literature, bibliographical, biographical, and critical. The 2 last volumes I would have to be a chronological catalogue of all noticeable or extant books, the others, be the number 6 or 8, to consist entirely of separate treatises, each giving a critical bibliobiographical history of some one subject. I will, with great pleasure, join you in learning Welsh and us, and you, I, Turner, and Owen, might dedicate ourselves for the first half year to a complete history of all Welsh, Saxon, and us books that are not translations, that are the native growth of Britain. If the Spanish neutrality continues, I will go in October or November to Biscay, and throw light on the Basque. Let the next volume contain the history of English poetry and poets, in which I would include all prose truly poetical. The first half of the second volume should be dedicated to great single names, Chaucer and Spenser, Shakespeare, Milton and Taylor, Dryden and Pope, the poetry of witty logic, Swift, Fielding, Richardson, Sterne. I write par hasard, but I mean to say all great names as have either formed epochs in our taste, or such, at least, as are representative, and the great object to be in each instance to determine, first, the true merits and demerits of the books, secondly, what of these belong to the age, what to the author quasi peculium. The second half of the second volume should be a history of poetry and romances, everywhere interspersed with biography, but more flowing, more consecutive, more bibliographical, chronological, and complete. The third volume I would have dedicated to English prose, considered as to style, as to eloquence, as to general impressiveness, a history of styles and manners, their causes, their birthplaces and parentage, their analysis. These 3 volumes would be so generally interesting, so exceedingly entertaining, that you might bid fair for a sale of the work at large. Then let the 4th volume take up the history of metaphysics, theology, medicine, alchemy, common, canon, and Roman law, from Alfred to Henry VII. In other words, a history of the Dark Ages in Great Britain. The 5th volume, carry on metaphysics and ethics to the present day in the first half. The second half, comprise the theology of all the reformers. In the 4th volume there would be a grand article on the philosophy of the theology of the Roman Catholic religion. In this 5th volume, under different names, Hooker, Baxter, Biddle, and Fox, the spirit of the theology of all the other parts of Christianity. The 6th and 7th volumes must comprise all the articles you can get, on all the separate arts and sciences that have been treated of in books since the Reformation, and, by this time, the book, if it answered at all, would have gained so high a reputation, that you need not fear having whom you liked to write the different articles, medicine, surgery, chemistry, etc., etc., navigation, travelers, voyages, etc., etc. If I go into Scotland, shall I engage Walter Scott to write the history of Scottish poets? Tell me, however, what you think of the plan. It would have one prodigious advantage: whatever accident stopped the work, would only prevent the future good, not mar the past. Each volume would be a great and valuable work per esse. Then each volume would awaken a new interest, a new set of readers, who would buy the past volumes of course. Then it would allow you ample time and opportunities for the slavery of the catalogue volumes, which should be at the same time an index to the work, which would be, in very truth, a pandect of knowledge, alive and swarming with human life, feeling, incident. By the by, what a strange abuse has been made of the word encyclopedia. It signifies, properly, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and ethics and metaphysics, which last, explaining the ultimate principles of grammar, log, writ, and eth. Formed a circle of knowledge. Asterisk 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 to call a huge unconnected miscellany of the ensemble, in an arrangement determined by the accident of initial letters, an encyclopedia, is the impudent ignorance of your Presbyterian bookmakers. Good night. God bless you. STC, footnote 1. Southey's biographer says regarding this scheme, soon after the date of the letter, my father paid a short visit to London, the chief purpose of which was to negotiate with Messrs. Longman and Rees respecting the management of a Bibliotheca Britannica upon a very extensive scale, to be arranged chronologically, and made a readable book by biography, criticism, and connecting chapters, to be published like the Cyclopedia in parts. Southey to St. Coleridge, Esquires, Bristol, the 3rd of August, 1803. Dear Coleridge, I meant to have written sooner, but those little units of interruption and preventions, which sum up to as ugly an aggregate as the items in a lawyer's bill, have come in the way. Your plan is too good, too gigantic, quite beyond my powers. If you had my tolerable state of health, and that love of steady and productive employment which is now grown into a necessary habit with me, if you were to execute and would execute it, it would be, beyond all doubt, the most valuable work of any age or any country, but I cannot fill up such an outline. No man can better feel where he fails than I do, and to rely upon you for whole quartos. Dear Coleridge, the smile that comes with that thought is a very melancholy one, and if Edith saw me now, she would think my eyes were weak again, when, in truth, the humor that covers them springs from another cause. For my own comfort, and credit, and peace of mind, I must have a plan which I know myself strong enough to execute. I can take author by author as they come in their series, and give his life and an account of his works quite as well as ever it has yet been done. I can write connecting paragraphs and chapters shortly and pertinently, in my way, and in this way the labor of all my associates can be more easily arranged. And, after all, this is really nearer the actual design of what I purport by a bibliotheca than yours would be, a book of reference, a work